As we're facing a troubled world and building a new one as we go, holding each other stronger together, standing as a people so bold.
Hello, and welcome to People So Bold. My name is Ann Howell, and I'm the GA Social Action Officer. In the latest episode of this podcast, I'm talking to the new GA president, Professor Geoff Levermore, about his journey to Unitarianism, his work with young people, and his commitment to climate science. He reminds us that there's a place for progressive religion to help us on the quest for living a good life, and that there is hope for the future if we work together to make governments and corporations take significant steps to mitigate the climate crisis, and that we owe it to the future generations not to be complacent.
Right. Well, I'm Geoff Levermore, and I'm a Unitarian, and I've been a Unitarian since about 2002. I must confess I'm not overly religious. We used to take children to Sunday school in the Church of England, and down south I was a member of the PCC, Parochial Church Council. And I was very worried that they might ask me what I believed, but they didn't. But in the little snippets of discussing the sermons and discussing other things with the people there, I realised that they had similar doubts to me. And I now realise that most Church of England people are Unitarians. Unitarian is all embracing. And we came up north. I moved up with my family to Manchester for job opportunities, and we went to the local Church of England church, which frankly was quite unfriendly. And my late wife said, "I've just read this in the paper that there are going to be no Unitarians in 5 years, and there's a Unitarian chapel at Norcliffe, which is on the Quarry Bank estate in Style, just near Manchester Airport." And we went along there, and I heard Pat Shaw preach. And two things I remember was that she said, well, the Church of England have great difficulties over women vicars, and we don't. I thought, great, because at the previous church there was a very good woman. She did become ordained, and she was very good. And she said also gay people are having difficulty over that. And we accept people as they are, and we love all people as they are. Although I think that love is more like respect. And I thought, good. And then she said, often evangelicals will have on their bumper a sticker saying, Jesus is the answer. And she said, I prefer to have their Jesus is the question. I thought, straight up, Pat. And I was taken in then because it was an open religion. You could discuss it. Whereas the other religious place I come across hide behind dogmas, which some people do not like to discuss. And I like an open religion. Perhaps I commit the social sins of discussing politics and religion with people. The two things you should never talk about to people, which to my mind strikes me as being rather not a very interesting conversation.
I completely agree with you there.
So I've been in Norcliffe Chapel, and there's another chapel nearby Dean Row. Unfortunately, my dear wife died in 2011. I took early retirement to look after her. She'd helped me so much. And I'm now remarried to an old colleague, and we got married at Dean Row Chapel. And Dean Row and Norcliffe are rather different chapels. So I sometimes been known to go to both services on a Sunday. And I like singing. I like hearing a good sermon. I must admit, I'm not so spiritual, the prayer side and so forth. Although I fully appreciate the transcendency of certain things, because my work has been involved in researching young people and ideas. And you suddenly get an idea, and it's just so wonderful. It's almost like a light bulb moment sometimes. Very few and far between. When they happen, they're great. And I find that this sometimes happens with the theology, and my theology has changed. And I think I've almost got a theology I'm happy with.
Well, that makes you unique, I think, amongst Unitarians. So what kind of research then is your work involved with young people?
Well, this started off as bog standard building service engineer. I'm a physicist by training, and building services is making sure buildings have the services. So they've got lighting, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, and so forth, and refrigeration. So they're comfortable. But there are a lot of laws of physics there. And I started teaching at South Bank Polytechnic, which became a university. And there are a lot of people working in industry. I knew the theory and they knew the practice, so we taught each other. This then went on about, well, how do we design buildings for the future? Because the engineers do most of the practical things on a building. The architect has the wonderful drawings, and the civil engineers and the building services engineers have to make it becomes a feasible building. And people started to say, well, what is that building going to perform like in 20, 30 years' time? So we looked at our weather data, we looked at the Hadley model and took some of that data, and climate change then took off. But before that, I had been an energy manager from 1979. So I've been involved in saving energy at the mundane level, and also then into climate change. And I was very lucky. There's a lot of luck in life. And I was invited to join the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change as a representative from the UK looking at buildings. And we write this really big report. It is huge. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of references. And there are a lot of us involved in that. And we had a lot of meetings around the world. People criticise us for travelling, but we worked really hard. And it was good to see other people. Also, it emphasised that it wasn't something that was Western-centric, that we went to China, we went to South America, and we went to New Zealand to actually discuss these things. And every country in the world can have a representative on the IPCC. So you see a little snapshot of how the United Nations should operate. And we went through the academic process of looking at the state of the art. And this is really important because so many things in climate change you read, especially from journalists, are their opinions. We were very, very careful, although we made some mistakes, that no opinions were allowed. It's purely peer reviewed. And one of the great things about academic life that it can give to other things is peer review. Somebody can take your paper anonymously, criticize it, analyze it, try and repeat your results, but it's open to doubt. And journalists who have sometimes no qualifications in something feel that they can say their opinion, and that's very, very dangerous. And I think what goes on in religion and dogmas and gets into society. So my current thoughts are we should have open religion, open societies, open to doubt, open to democracy. Those are key elements.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing about what is truth, I mean, it does feel like it's just been smeared over the past, especially the past 10 years. And whereas opinions are just being thrown around as,
Yeah, I mean, the scientific method is empirical, and your truth is as good as your last experiments. The thing is that most people in research and science are actually skeptical. You prove it to me, or you show that. And we've shown that a number of theories and laws can be adapted, inductive, not deductive. And Karl Popper was talking about this. And one of the things that he came up with was that totalitarian states, and he was thinking about the Second World War and the Nazis and the communists, that when you have an institution that thinks they know the truth and only they know the truth and will not allow it to be questioned, you are in serious trouble. And I think that also applies to religion. And I think that liberal religions have a lot to contribute. And a religion that doesn't have a liberal wing to it or isn't reasonably liberal is not necessarily a good religion, although a lot of religions that are not that liberal do have a lot of good truths in them. Religion has elements of bad and good, and more good than bad. And the things that Netanyahu has quoted from the Old Testament, where there's a lot of death and a lot of killing, and also then equally you've got Hamas that bring out a hadith, which is just as bad. I think that with a liberal look at those religions, and can some of these texts, this holy revealed scripture that goes back basically to the Bronze Age, refer to today?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, Jesus never said anything about slavery. Jesus rarely said anything about women's rights, although there were a number of women. And St. Paul actually depended on women for his church and for Christianity to be built. And I think some of what St. Paul's got has got a bad reputation. But his early church, as he said, and I've actually said at a conference which was mainly attended by Muslim people, and I slightly adapted it because it was in Turkey. I said, a local man, Paul of Tarsus, you might have heard of him, said neither free man nor slave, neither male nor female, neither Muslim, neither Jew, neither Gentile and Christian, we are all one. I left out the bit in Christ, but that is the thing. We are all one. And I had to give a service on climate change, part of our Festival of Nature we were having. I thought, what does the Bible say about climate change? And in fact, very little. But when I delved into it, wonderful internet and Google, I found that there was this theologian, Gordon Kaufman. And Kaufman came up with the idea that God is the mystery of creation. And it fits in then with the Big Bang, the fact that we've got such a huge universe. And if we think about that, if God wanted to have the Earth as a testing ground for human beings, he could have got away with the solar system. Why have this immense universe? And then we look at life forming on the Earth. How did that happen? We don't know. We don't know what happened before the Big Bang. The miracle there is the Big Bang happened at a singularity where time and space did not exist. We know this because that's how the equations work. And when you bring it forward, how did life start? We don't know. But we're gradually finding more and more out. And then we evolved with brains to reason and to think, which is one of the greatest things. And we should use those brains. And then when you look at the universe and you can see back so distant, and it almost makes you feel religious and spiritual when you think of this vast universe of which we only know 4%, because you've got dark matter and dark energy. How ignorant are we? But the purpose of life is to learn, try and make things a little better and lead the good life. And this is what I think religion should center on, asking the question, how do I personally lead a good life or the best life I can?
And that does feel like that is the big question, isn't it? And that's,
yes,
and
many people have got it, whether they're religious or not.
Absolutely. There is a state of mind, and I think some people can achieve that, through their own religion and just through, I guess, their scripture or whatever. But I think the Unitarian way of doing it, which is insightful and inquisitive, is maybe a more,
And the thing is, with Kaufman's theology, this mystery of creation, God, is neither Jew nor Muslim, nor Hindu, or atheist, or agnostic. It's everybody. There's that path to the top of the mountain we're all trying to find. And I'm finding that looking at other religions, there are a lot of things could be gained from Islam, from Buddhism, from Hinduism, and the others. In fact, you can go way back because mankind has been religious ever since there's been civilization. It's only recently that we've been a bit more questioning, although I'm sure in the old days, people questioned just as much as we do.
I'm sure too. I mean, it just doesn't, things get lost in history, don't they? And so,
Yes.
I mean, I think we had this idea, this arrogance that we are the most evolved, and that our thought process allows us to question things in a deeper level. But I'm sure the Egyptians probably had their own questions and doubts about their deities, and
Oh yes, yes, and they had a heretic,
Yeah.
and Pharaoh, and who said there was only one God, and he didn't last too long. But I think that we've almost got religion in our DNA, that we have to think about these things. And again, the beauty of Kaufman's theology is that the miracle is not only we're created, but the rest of the universe. So they're also worth respect. And so we have to respect other animals. We have to respect flora and fauna and so forth. That we mustn't be arrogant, but we must use our talents as best we can to work out a sensible way of running this world.
So what role do you think that spirituality or religion has in modern issues like climate change?
I think a lot, because I must admit that spirituality I find difficult defining, and the soul and things like that. But this thinking of outside oneself, that's what I'd say what spirituality is, and getting these insights and appreciating how other people might feel, appreciating ideas, and ideas drive me a lot. That I think that when we look at climate change, you can go through religion, and what we find from early on is that some of the great saints and some of the great people of the faith actually went to philosophy. Saint Augustine was very keen, I think, on Plato. And when you go to some of the Muslim scholars, they had Aristotle. And I think one of the Muslim scholars said, well, religion is for the people that can't read or write, but philosophy is ultimate. So it's that thinking. And then you come to the ethics that have been part of our evolution. And I think that you've more or less got a hierarchy of ethics, but the greatest ethic you can have is to do something for somebody you will never meet and somebody you do not know, and that's future generations. And it's trying to work out how we make sure that things are suitable for future generations, because some people say they will be richer than us, they can sort it out, which is a terrible way. We should leave the world in a better place when we die than when we were born.
There's a great, in the 70s, there was this idea of stewardship of the earth, which
yes.
and it feels like that got lost somehow, and just when we needed it, kind of in the past 20, 30 years. But that's exactly that. That's keeping the planet, our home,
yes.
for future generations, and making sure that it's still
Yes, I think the only thing that add to that is that I'm very much from the science background, and I believe that technology is going to be a major source of overcoming the problems of climate change. We've got the difficulty of persuading people to change their lifestyle, which is very, very difficult. And I can see that we were discussing climate change once, and I think Tony Blair said, well, I agree with you guys, but if I put it down in my manifesto, I wouldn't get elected. And this is the nearest I can come to original sin, that people are putting their own interests first when they know that we are heading to potential disaster if they don't do something.
Yeah. Well, and this is obviously, why. And where do you start? Is it with governments? Is it with the, the rich companies? Is it with billionaires? But I mean, there's got to be some sense that of taking responsibility for what we're doing.
Yes, I think that I heard somebody, he was an Extinction Rebellion person, said that one of the greatest things we can do is educate people. And I see my purpose as trying to do that, to get it through to people. I've got a graph that shows the carbon dioxide that we, the human beings, have put into the atmosphere and not natural carbon. You can see it from the isotope analysis when you look at the Antarctic, and you do ice cores where you can go back hundreds of thousands of years and you can see it going up and down with the ice ages. And then you can see it rising up due to the Anthropocene, which we are responsible for. At the end of the day, we are the people that vote people in. We've got to try and put peer pressure on colleagues and others to do the right thing. And frankly, we've got to pay a lot more money to make sure we can get renewable energy in, which is very difficult for politicians. And I think that a lot of people, I didn't realize this till I became a member of the IPCC, that people that have a bit of knowledge about these things should actually get it out to people so they understand. And this, I think, also applies to religion and ethics, that people understand what we should be doing and try and take a step back, take a pause, think, what am I doing in life? How can I make it slightly better?
You have been listening to People So Bold, the UK Unitarian Social Action Podcast, a production of the General Assembly of Unitarian and Free Christian Churches. If you would like more information about the topics explored in this podcast, please refer to the People So Bold newsletter. You can sign up for this newsletter by sending an email to ahowell@unitarian.org.uk.
Standing as people so bold, walking into the unknown. Whatever will come, we know we're ready for the changes. It's darkest before the dawn.